Hi, my name is Ben, and sadly, I didn't post anything this year. A few YouTube shorts, a little Halloween short film that I threw together, but other than that, I didn't really have time because I came down with a horrible case of full-time employment. But I still really wanted to hop on here and talk about my favorite movies that I saw in 2022. Just like every year, these are my personal favorites, not necessarily objectively the best movies that came out. I also don't have the ability to watch every single movie that comes out, so if your favorite movie isn't on this list, it may just be because I didn't see it, or because I didn't like it as much as you. And sorry. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk about my favorite movies of 2022. Alright, first up at number 10, we have The Menu. The Menu is a movie that I really didn't want to see. The trailers made it look like it was kind of pretentious, but then I decided to actually go watch it and I realized that that's the joke. This is much more of a very dark comedy than a horror movie, though it can be horrific at times. From start to finish, it makes fun of artists, critics, overly zealous fans, and out-of-touch rich investors, and it is hysterical. Sometimes I identified with Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who's kind of the audience insert, who just is like, I just want some good food, and I don't know what all this other crap everyone else is talking about is. But then other times I realized, oh hey, I'm totally that overly zealous fan who can be just obnoxious and is talking down to all of his friends about how incredibly cool and complex something is. It just did a fantastic job of making fun of all of the ways that we take ourselves a little bit too seriously sometimes. And it also helped me kind of realize what my taste in movies is. Like, I oftentimes don't really get super avant-garde stuff, but my friends who like dumb blockbusters think that I'm too pretentious. And after watching this movie, I realized what I really like is just a really, really well-made cheeseburger. I don't want to go to McDonald's, and some people think that that makes me like all snobby, but I also can't really tell the difference between a $30 steak and a $100 steak. At the end of the day, what I really want is a fantastic cheeseburger of a movie, and that's what this movie is. Just a really well-made cheeseburger. Coming in at number 9, we have The Fablemens. I have honestly gotten really tired of movies that are just movies, about making movies like Mank, or even movies I really love like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or La La Land. But The Fablemens really got me. This movie, for those who don't know, is kind of a fictionalized version of Steven Spielberg's childhood. But when I finished watching the movie, I listened to an interview with him and was shocked to realize just how much of this movie is basically word for word what actually happened in his childhood. It's really interesting to see how he's such a combination of his parents. His dad's left brain engineering and his mom's right brain artistry, combining to create a fantastic filmmaker who has artistic vision but is also amazing at problem solving and constructing shots. And this movie just really hit me in the feels because I identified with this young version of Spielberg. It kind of felt like I was watching a movie about my childhood at times. And I really couldn't help but relate to how this young man can really only experience life when it's through a lens. It's how he deals with the world around him. That really spoke to me because I can be the same way sometimes. And the last shot of the movie is by and far my favorite of the year. Next up at number 8, we have Pinocchio, specifically Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. This is maybe the best stop-motion animated movie I've ever seen. The motion of the animation is so fluid that oftentimes I kinda had to remind myself I wasn't just watching live action or a 3D animated movie. And I love how Del Toro and his co-writer, the creator of Over the Garden Wall, really took this story that we all know backwards and forwards and turned it into this really dark fantasy fairy tale. I don't really have a lot more to say other than the whole thing is great. It's a lot of fun. It's beautiful to look at. It's oftentimes very moving and sad. This might be my favorite version of Pinocchio, and it definitely is my favorite animated movie of the year. At number 7, we have The Batman. The Batman's opening is probably my favorite opening to any Batman movie ever. In fact, it might be the most Batman feeling thing we've ever gotten in a live-action adaptation of Batman. It is stunning, the incredibly ingenious decision to set it on Halloween, so we have all these masked and costumed people standing about, which just makes the whole town feel like it's inhabited by supervillains. The incredibly gorgeous cinematography from Greg Fraser, who's very quickly becoming one of my favorite cinematographers. I mean, like, literally, he will just shoot someone outside in natural lighting, and somehow he makes it look better than anything I've ever seen. And this movie is no different. Every last bit of it looks gorgeous. And I love a lot of the creative decisions made in this movie. I love how the Riddler is basically Jigsaw from Saw, or a slasher from another horror movie who honestly gives you the creeps. I love how they basically just make him into one of these really creepy internet people who plays on people's extremism and builds a following. It feels troublingly close to reality. Matt Reeves is a freaking genius, and he has managed to make the only superhero movie I saw this year that I really truly adored. It's not perfect. I don't think it ever gets quite as good as that opening, and I was a little disappointed that it's a very grounded, realistic take on Batman, because it just kind of felt like Batman Begins again for me at points. But that doesn't take away the fact that this is a fantastic movie and one of the best adaptations of Batman we have ever gotten. I loved it. And next up, we have Glass Onion. I will never forgive Netflix for releasing this movie in theaters, but only in like 700 theaters. The closest theaters that were playing this movie to me were 2 hours away each, and I just couldn't justify that much of a drive for a movie. But I wish I could have seen this in theaters, because it was a blast. Absolutely hilarious, wonderfully twisty and turny. It's everything that I wanted out of a Knives Out sequel. Now, in the coming months, this might move up or down my list. I'm not sure, because I only just watched this, because it only just premiered on Netflix. But right now I'm really riding high on it. I think it's a lot of fun, and maybe not quite as good as the first one, but I also kind of had to digest the first one over a long period of time to really figure out how much I loved it. So I'm sure this one's the same. It's fun, it's fantastic, go check it out. At number 5, we have The Northman. At one point, this was my favorite movie of the year, and honestly, things have shifted around, but sometimes I wonder if I should bump this back up to the top of the list, because it's just so great. As a kid who was a bit of a history buff, I was always like, why are there no Viking movies? Well, now we have like the Viking movie. I don't think there ever should be another Viking movie. This did everything you would ever want with a Viking movie. At times it kind of felt like a Skyrim movie to me, or at least the closest thing we'll ever get, from the visuals to a part where he like literally fights basically what looks like a Draugr. As someone who loves sword movies and historical epics, this was just a blast for me. It has a few moments that get a little avant-garde, which I kinda hate, because I've tried to show this to people and those scenes just take them out of it completely. But for me, I really enjoyed just being in this world in this time period. So yeah, I'd really recommend it. Go check it out. At number 4, we have Avatar: The Way of Water. I made a video like 3 years ago talking about how underrated Avatar was and how I couldn't wait for the sequel and the sequel's gonna be great, and I got all these comments saying, no, the sequel's not gonna be great, even though James Cameron directed 2 of the best sequels of all time. And I would like to say, for the record, I was right. This movie is fantastic. It has only improved on the special effects from the first one. It's improved the story, it's improved the characterization, it's improved in almost every single way. Really, the only place where I feel like it kind of falls short is the story doesn't hook you quite as much as the original. I think the fact that the original is a bit of a cliche story kind of reels you in, because you kind of know the beats, you know where it's going, so it takes you along for its ride. This movie just kind of hangs out. The main characters go to live with these aquatic Na'vi, and most of the movie is just kind of chilling in the water. I felt like I was watching a nature documentary like Planet Earth or Blue Planet, but just set on an alien planet. And that's not a complaint. I loved it. So many shots were just utterly breathtaking and totally realistic. It really is kind of rude for James Cameron to come along and make this movie and show blockbuster filmmaking how it's done. Like, how do you go back to any normal blockbuster after watching this movie and knowing that this is the kind of stuff you could be getting on a regular basis? Stuff that looks this good, stuff that has actual stakes and real human emotion. One of my favorite bits, there's like these crab mechs. The first movie had all these mechs, this one takes place in the water. So the mechs work like crabs, where they waddle around on all these legs and have these giant forearms, but then the legs like retract and they become submarines. It was just such an ingenious design. And so I'll say the same thing about this movie that I said about the first one. Is it one of the best movies ever made? No, but dang is it a fantastic blockbuster and an amazing science fiction film, and one of the best spectacles you will ever see on the big screen. Go see it in IMAX in 3D today, because I need every single Avatar sequel that James Cameron wants to make. At number 3, we have Nope. I was actually kind of disappointed with Nope when I walked out of the theater. I felt it really didn't quite hit the same highs as Get Out or Us. But as the years gone on, it has really stuck with me. I think about this movie more than maybe any other movie I've seen this year. It is one of the very few horror movies that I've seen that truly got under my skin. There is a scene in this movie that disturbed me so much I had trouble sleeping for like a week. That has never happened to me before. This movie really captured a feeling of dread and horror so potent that I kinda didn't want to watch many horror movies for the rest of the year. And that's really effective. Now, granted, it might have just been playing to specific fears I have, but this film is an incredibly well-made movie on every level. The acting, the comedy, the lighting, the nighttime shots in this film are some of the most astounding I've ever seen. They look like nighttime, and yet you can see everything with crystal clarity, and the reason is because they shot them during the day. And that just blows my mind. How do you do day for night this well? Apparently they used infrared cameras, which invert the color of everything, and then layered that footage over the normal footage so that you had a blacked out sky, but still bright lighting on all of your main characters. The ingenuity it takes to come up with that, it boggles my mind. I love its incredibly subtle commentary on our modern day fascination with capturing everything on film. Kind of like the Fablemens, where young Spielberg can really only experience life through his camera. Nope highlights how that's our entire culture now. We see horrible, horrifying things in real life, and all we can do is whip out our camera phones and record it. We are the generation that watches terrorist attacks live on TV. We record ourselves on TikTok and YouTube in our most vulnerable moments. It's a really interesting exploration of how that kind of thing can turn destructive in our lives. But it's done subtly, so it's not preachy. It's just a really great movie about a UFO, and a really scary one at that. And all of those themes are lying there just underneath the surface if you really want to dig into it. It is yet another work of genius from Jordan Peele, and I really just want to keep watching this man for the rest of his career. Please give us a Jordan Peele movie every single year. Please and thank you. Now, at number 2, we have Top Gun Maverick. My brother asked me, hey, what's like your favorite movie of the year? And I was like, oh man, Top Gun Maverick's up there. And he was like, really? Top Gun Maverick? Like, I saw it, it was really good, but like, second best movie of the year? And I was like, yeah. Cause like, I felt the same way. I walked out of it the first time, I was like, man, that was really good. And then a friend of mine wanted to see it, so I went and saw it with that guy. And I walked out and I was like, man, that was just as good. And then I saw it a third time with a different friend, and I was like, man, that was just as good. And then I watched it a fourth time and it was just as good. This movie is exactly what I want out of movies. Just give me an amazing spectacle with a really good story that's just well told. The aviation stunts in this movie blew my mind. Someone pointed out that if you factor in the costs of all of these real military planes that they used while filming this might be the most expensive movie ever made. And it shows. There were so many parts where I was holding my breath or my jaw just dropped wide open. It was just a ton of fun from beginning to end. And the fact that it actually tried to tell a compelling story. I know that's like what most movies should do, but so few blockbusters do that anymore. I love how this movie is kind of just about Tom Cruise. You've got this guy who's been around for forever. Everyone considers him a legend, but he's getting older. And he's gonna have to hang it up soon. And this movie really honestly grapples with the sadness of that. And I really appreciated that. What can I say? This was just a really solid movie from beginning to end. And I really hope we get a few more Tom Cruise extravaganzas like this before he's finally done. And my number 1 favorite movie of the year was Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie is the only movie I saw this year that really felt like it did something new. Years ago, I was like, man, why hasn't anyone ever made like a multiverse movie? Maybe I should work on that. And I've, played around with ideas for a multiverse movie for years, but now there's no reason to do one because Everything Everywhere All at Once did everything that you possibly could do with that topic. Where a lot of multiverse media like Rick and Morty goes, wow, if there's an infinite multiverse, then nothing matters. This movie posits the question, if nothing matters, maybe everything does. I tried to show this movie to some friends of mine, and they did not like it. It was a little too over the top for them, a little too crass, a little too weird. And I can get how this movie wouldn't be your thing. But I was so in love with the creativity on display here in this film. Just all of the weird, crazy things that they did. Walking out of this movie, I felt the same way I felt when I walked out of Inception for the first time, where I was like, that was an original idea. This movie just did everything. It throws everything at the wall and sees what sticks. But the thing that is really so wonderful about the movie is the heart of it. The family story at its heart. Specifically the story of Waymond, who is by and far the best part of the movie. He's a character I identify a lot with. He's kind of goofy and silly and chronically nice, and so because of that, all of the cynical characters in this movie kind of just brush him off. They underestimate him. They think, wow, he's dumb, he's naive. And there's a wonderful speech in the movie where he basically says, I'm not naive. My cheerful, optimistic outlook is the way I get through life. Everything Everywhere All at Once is a delightful movie. It throws everything at the wall to see what sticks. And some of it doesn't. Some of it didn't quite work for me, but I'm still glad that they tried it. It's crazy, it's creative, it's super fun. And the way that they made this movie is insanely impressive. They had a team of like 7 visual effects artists who did all of the special effects in this movie, which is mind-blowing because this movie feels as big in scope and scale as something from the MCU. But the best thing about it is that it wears its heart on its sleeve. It's a movie about how just because we live in what can feel like an uncaring universe, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't care, that we shouldn't be kind to the people around us. Because ultimately, those people are what matters. It's sweet, it's fun, it's creative. I get it if it's not your thing, but it was 100% my thing. And it is my favorite movie of the year. Well, those are all of my favorite movies of 2020, but what about you? Comment below and let me know what your top 10 favorite films of the year are. If you'd like to see some of the other movies that I thought were interesting this year, feel free to follow me on Letterboxd. I'm constantly logging stuff, so if you want to see what I think of movies on a more regular basis, the link is in the comments below. And yeah.